Hunter Biden still being probed, and we're all wanting to know where this goes. We spent some time talking about Hunter Biden, Tony Bobulinski, Burisma, and all of the nefarious activities that might have involved the former vice president, because there were a lot of allegations at that time that Hunter was sort of using his father's position as leverage to get deals. What experience does Hunter Biden have being a part of an oil company based in the Ukraine? Well, apparently something like $80,000 worth a month of expertise, or that might have been some other type of a grift, some other type of a bad deal that involved a little bit of quid pro quo action where Hunter Biden was sort of an extension of Joe Biden, and there was a little bit of bribery or some other things going on, right? It's all being speculated about, but we are wanting to know what's happening, been wanting to know what's happening, given the fact that Hunter Biden happens to be the vice president's son, now the president's son. You would think that it was kind of an important inquiry, that we would have had some other journalists taking a deep dive into these matters, but that really didn't happen. And if you rewind the clock back on some of the coverage that we went through here on this channel, we went to groundnews.com, which will show you where news articles are ending up on the internet, whether they're being sort of promoted on right-wing blogosphere sides or the left-wing sides. And Ground News said that there was basically a media blackout on the entire Hunter Biden scandal leading up to the election. And we talked about that here. I took screenshots from the Washington Post, from New York Times, and from many other news agencies showing they just didn't talk about it at all. And there was now this laptop floating around that allegedly had some child, awful things on there, and nobody wanted to talk about it. Very interesting. Was it because it was bad evidence or illegitimate evidence, or it was a Russian hack or something like that? Or maybe the bigger reason is because it was so damaging to their candidate that it would have caused another 4 years of Trump, and nothing was more important than making sure that he was eliminated. So we're going to go through this. Now, we have some more information about this U.S. attorney, about Hunter Biden, and really about the events leading up to the election. So let's dig into it. We're going to grab our headline over from Politico.com, and it says, Hunter Biden's prosecutor rejected moves that would have revealed the probe earlier, which might have been useful because the American people may have wanted to know if in the White House there was a pedophile in there, or a child pornographer in there, or somebody who was sexually assaulting women, or somebody who was engaged in other very nefarious criminal activity. Might have been good for the American public to know, especially if the man in charge, Joe Biden, was covering up for any of those things, or at least turning the other eye to that. So we can dive into this, written by Ben Schrickinger over at Politico. He says, a veteran U.S. attorney, David Weiss, known for his willingness to take on powerful Delaware figures, kept his investigation into Biden's son out of the campaign. Last summer, federal officials in Delaware that were investigating Biden faced a dilemma. The probe had reached a point where prosecutors could have sought search warrants and issued a flurry of grand jury subpoenas, which at that point, right, all of that would have been part of public record. Everybody would have been able to see that. Some officials involved in the case wanted to do just that, but others urged caution, right? So we're going to see a lot of this in this article, right? Who are these others? We don't know. They advised Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss to avoid taking any actions that could alert the public to the existence of the case in the middle of a presidential election. So why would you do that? Well, of course, the answer would be because if U.S. Attorney David Weiss started prosecuting Hunter Biden like right in the middle of the election campaign, David Weiss is going to be just blown out of proportion. He's going to be blown out of the planet for being a political prosecutor, for being somebody who's using the power of the Justice Department for going after a presidential candidate's son. And this is the worst thing ever. And Donald Trump's abusing the Department of Justice, and the whole world is falling. We already told you that he's basically, Hitler reincarnated. And that means that what we're evidencing, what we're seeing, is evidence of the fact that his Hitlerian tendencies are just obvious, right in our reality. So what this says, continuing on, to his credit, he listened, said a person involved in the discussions, reported here for the first time. He listened, right? So he's getting all this pressure. Don't talk about it. And he listened, said a person involved. Who is it? Weiss decided to wait, averting the possibility that the investigation would become a months-long campaign issue. And so you can, look, as we go through this article, you can flesh out and pick what side of the aisle you're on here. Certainly, there would be concerns from any administration that's in power that if you're going to start using the Department of Justice in the middle of an election season, that might seem like it could be problematic. It might look like you've got a conflict of interest there. You're the president. You are sort of running the Department of Justice, arguably, and you could use your power, your leverage from the White House to go after your political enemies, especially in the middle of an election. How do we know this? Well, because we've seen law enforcement go after political enemies before. It happened in 2016 when that happened with the FBI, the Peter Strzok investigation, the fake dossier from Russia, the steal, the whole thing. The whole thing was FBI law enforcement getting warrants, accessing the Trump campaign based on a fake dossier from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And the whole thing went on already in 2016. So we know how the Department of Justice can be abused. We get that. And so I think it's actually a fair criticism to say, well, if David Weiss would have gone after Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, for all of this very serious criminality, that would look like a political prosecution. So I understand that perspective. Conversely, I also think that if you have the vice president's son, who's going to be in the White House, as we are seeing, now he's an artist now, whatever that is. So the allegation here that he had a laptop with child pornography on it and other very, very illegal things are, of course, of utmost public information. Right? Don't we need to know that stuff? If he's going to be a stone's throw away from the White House and traveling around on Air Force One and all these things, wouldn't we need to know that? And does anybody think that if this had been involving one of Donald Trump's kids, if there was a laptop from hell that came from Don Jr., that this wouldn't have been national news for 90 days? Give me a break. So this whole thing just reeks of a political cover-up. When I'm reading the article, that's what I want to find, right? That's what I'm looking for. I'm saying, oh, this kind of stinks. What else is in here? And so I wanted to dive into this guy. Who is David Weiss? Let's see if we can find anything about him. I went over to the Department of Delaware, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and so this is what they're telling us. This was updated about a year and a half ago, Feb 5, 2020. It says he was appointed by President Trump, right? So the first thing that you think might be, oh, this guy's a typical liberal, right? Covering up for the Democrats or something like that, but not really. Appointed by Trump to serve in Delaware. Happened on February 22nd, 2018. Previously first assistant U.S. attorney in other places. Legal career 1984. My goodness. Long time. After completing his clerkship, assistant U.S. attorney for a long time, practiced in firm's commercial litigation department, different groups, graduate of Washington University in St. Louis, and he's a member of Delaware and Pennsylvania bars. So licensed in 2 states. And as I was digging around, kind of looking through what this guy has done, he had previously actually investigated Joe Biden. So this happened a long time ago, back during the 2008 campaign. And so he had this history of being a U.S. attorney, and then he kind of got leapfrogged by another U.S. attorney who came in, and then he was sort of, demoted to kind of an assistant attorney. But he worked on this case involving an investigation into a 2008 campaign by Joe Biden, which was when he was vice president under Barack Obama. So this story came over, again, from not the District of Delaware, but this was over from Politico, another article that they wrote earlier in the year. They said Christopher Tigani was a wealthy beer distributor with close ties to Biden, and the FBI confronted him outside of a Royal Farms gas station. So he was in trouble, Tigani. He served as a bundler for Biden's aborted 2008 presidential campaign, where he reimbursed employees for contributions made in their names, a well-worn tactic for circumventing campaign finance laws. So this guy says, look, if you work for me, you make a donation to Joe Biden in your name, I'll cover the cost of that, right? Because he can only donate so much under the donation laws. So he uses his company to skirt those, making, you give Joe $2,000 under Sally's name, John's name, and Larry's name, and then you can escape those things. What happened that day in Tegan's sentencing has never been revealed. He would wear a wire for the FBI and record people close to the then vice president, seeking, he said, to confirm his belief that they knew of his reimbursements and investigate whether they or others close to Joe Biden engaged in any quid pro quo deals. Over several months, he said that his handlers used him to try to elicit cooperation from others closer to Biden at the time, and even discussed trying to get him in front of Biden with himself wearing a wire. Tigani said that he recorded conversations with Biden's finance chief, Dennis Toner, as well as businessmen close to Biden and others turned lobbyists. He said that he sought to develop evidence against other players in Delaware, but only ultimately Tigani himself faced federal charges. And this is the same prosecutor who handled the Tigani case that led up to the 2008 investigation of Joe. He was sort of back looking again at the Hunter Biden investigation, fast forward now to 2020. So he's sort of been poking around the Biden family for some time and hasn't found anything. Interesting. So, is that because there's nothing there? Or is that because this guy's a Joe Biden fan. He's a Delaware guy. I don't know. It's speculation. I don't want to imply any nefarious intent from this guy, but certainly people are asking that question. Everybody out there on Twitter, what the heck? Who is this guy? Why did he cover this stuff up? So let's see if we can give him a fair shake. The Justice Department, as we recall, when we were covering Joe Biden and the transition in, as soon as a new administration comes in, one of the first things they do is they just eliminate basically the old guys, right? Nope, you don't. Your boss isn't here anymore. You're done too. So pack up, get out of here. So that happens typically with the Justice Department, right? They go in, they axe a bunch of U.S. attorneys, and so they replace them with their own people. Trump did it. Everybody does it. So when Joe Biden did that, this is what happened. So the Justice Department seeks the resignations of Trump-era U.S. attorneys. They're going to ask U.S. attorneys who were appointed by Trump to resign from their posts. But the U.S. attorneys that are overseeing the federal tax probe involving Biden's son, Hunter, will remain in place. So we've got the acting attorney general, Monty Wilkinson, back at the time, called U.S. attorney David Weiss, who runs the federal prosecutor's office in Delaware, and asked him to remain on the job, the official said. Right, so you stay on there. Now, again, you could sort of look at that both ways. You could say, if they would have pulled him off, that would have shown that they're trying to interfere with an investigation, right? That's obstruction. They're going to remove the U.S. attorney that's responsible for investigating Hunter Biden. Therefore, we're not going to do that because that can open the door, right? Donald Trump was skewered for allegations resembling that, for obstructing the investigation. So if they did that, they might say, well, that opens the door for that allegation. So they don't want to do that. Conversely, right, they may know the guy and they may say, oh, it's not a problem. It's a U.S. attorney. He investigated us before. Nothing happened with it. So he's kind of a known quantity. So we'll just leave him there and avoid any of the allegations otherwise. Justice Department has been investigating the finances of Biden, including scrutinizing some of his Chinese business dealings and other transactions. The tax investigation was launched in 2018, the year before the elder Biden announced his candidacy for president. So why didn't we hear about it? Hunter Biden confirmed the existence of the investigation in December after a round of subpoenas was issued in the case. The Associated Press has reported that the subpoena seeking documents from Biden asked for information related to more than 24 entities, including the Ukraine gas deal. That was back on February 8th, 2021. And so we know that this has sort of been a long, drawn-out process. Before we get to David Weiss's Twitters, I want to finish up with some of the other articles. So let's go on here. It says, after Tigani, so the U.S. attorney was investigating the beer distributor, Oberle. He was a political ally of the Bidens, and he succeeded Weiss as a U.S. attorney, right? So we've got Weiss, who is succeeded by Oberle. But Oberle then lacked experience trying federal cases, so he kept Weiss on as his assistant, and he praised Weiss's work in an interview, saying he was loyal. He did a nice job for me, right? Okay, so now you start to see that maybe Oberle, who's a political ally of Biden's, who has Weiss there as the U.S. attorney, keeps him on as an assistant, praises Weiss's work in an interview. He was loyal, and he did a nice job for me. A political ally of the Bidens is making those quotes. Okay, so that's pretty obvious where that is leaning. Now, this is a big long article. I only clipped out the pieces, obviously, that I want to use to make my point. The rest of the article really, in my opinion, goes entirely over the top at justifying sort of how independent Weiss is, right? I don't know Weiss. He could watch this video and say, what I'm saying is mean about him or whatever. I'm just going off of the evidence that we have here. And what it seems like to me is that the author of this piece really tried hard to sort of justify Weiss's independence. And I'm not saying he's not independent, but it just felt like, when you have to overly explain that you're sorry for something or you didn't do something wrong, and enough already. We got it. Okay, he's independent. Leave us alone. Why do you have to keep telling me that every 3 sentences? All right, in 2017, Trump nominated Weiss to serve as a U.S. attorney on a permanent basis on the recommendation of Delaware's 2 Democratic senators who both praised the choice. So Donald Trump would always come out and be like, I'm the best hirer. I hire the best people. Not really. Okay, most of your hires have been absolutely terrible. By late 2018, Weiss's office was investigating Hunter Biden's activity. Sure, yeah, put him on there. The Democratic senators love the guy. Not only that, but Oberle, another political ally of the Bidens, loves the guy also. Very loyal. By late 2018, so now he's investigating Hunter Biden, responding to a number of leads, including some related to his dealing with the Chinese. While investigators pursued suspicions of possible money laundering and violations of the FARA Act, Foreign Agents Registration Act, the criminal investigation eventually came to focus on whether he had paid taxes on all of his income, right? It's all about the taxes. Forget money laundering or Burisma or foreign agents. It's all about the taxes. Hunter Biden maintained that he acted appropriately. By last summer, the probe had reached the point at which investigators could have issued grand jury subpoenas, could have sought search warrants, might have revealed its existence at the time when many of Trump's supporters were seeking to draw attention to Hunter Biden's actions. We were doing that exactly here. Weiss, however, decided to delay taking any actions that were likely to make the existence of Hunter Biden probe public. Concerns about affecting the outcome loomed large when Weiss entertained arguments about advancing the probe, according to the person involved in the discussion. The person, who is it? Now, no matter what he did, the decision was sure to come under scrutiny for signs of politicization. It was a close call, said the person who believes Weiss was right to hold off. That case has way more credibility now. No, it had plenty of credibility a year ago whenever we were talking about it. Same amount of credibility now. They had the laptop, they had the files, there were copies floating around all over the place. If the actual news media wanted to do some actual journalisming, they could have done so back then, but they didn't, because it would have been an investigation that would have resulted in an answer that they did not want to report on. It would have not been a happy, reportable story. Oh, look what we found. Nothing, right? There's a lot there. We've seen the pictures. They're flying around all over the place on the internet. So we know what was really going on. Now, let's see what U.S. Attorney David C. Weiss was doing over on Twitter. And again, there's really not much here, right? So, don't think that there's going to be a smoking gun in this segment. It's not a slow drip surprise. Here it is. Everything is pretty vanilla here, right? There's not much going on, but we can take a look at some of his, I would say, political orientations based on his tweets. You can gather a lot from a person from their Twitter account, believe me. So what we have here is his Twitter account, and you notice he's verified. We got 72 tweets here. That's it. So not much. Let's go through a couple of them. He says, "Citizens of Delaware, beware. January 8th. Please contact the FBI at the numbers displayed below if you have any information related to the breach of the U.S. Capitol building." Okay, he's a U.S. attorney. He's, pumping the U.S. FBI Washington field office about the January 6th Capitol Hill stuff. So not much of a surprise there. He's a U.S. attorney. He's going to be prosecuting cases like this, theoretically, or he's in the same agency that would. So nothing there. We have U.S. attorney says, "Did you know U.S. attorneys across the country are appointing election officers for their district to monitor reports of voter fraud?" That came out October 27th, 2020. That was posted by the U.S. attorneys, and he just gave that a little bit of a retweet. So every citizen must be able to vote without interference or discrimination. Got to remain active and vigilant in this election to protect the integrity of the election, according to U.S. Attorney Scott Brady, right? This is back when Trump is still president. So, we're talking about voter fraud and voter election at that time. We also have here on January 6th, he's responding to what happened on January 6th, says that the today's scheduled events at the National Capitol building were supposed to mark another step in the peaceful transition of power. Instead, the lawlessness we witnessed was an embarrassment, and those responsible should be brought to justice. As a nation, we are better than this, right? And so a lot of that language on January 6th, I'm sure I said something very similar to that this was not a good look for anything. This was a bad day. So, again, not much there that you can glean out of that. Let's see what else is going on. It says he's responding to after an altercation, the victim was shot in or near the vehicle. So we can sort of see what he thinks about guns now. This situation is a microcosm of what we're seeing repeatedly in Delaware and throughout the country. A physical altercation turns deadly when a gun is introduced into the equation. So it doesn't sound very pro-gun there. And this is October 4th, 2020. So not necessarily, I think, in alignment with the Republican side of the aisle. He says that this behavior has to stop. There must be immediate and severe consequences for the decision to pick up a gun. Okay, well, people must know that if you unlawfully pick up a gun, you will go to jail. The future of our community is at stake. So he's a very strong proponent of, sounds like, gun laws. We have another one here says, oh, this is when Donald Trump got sick with COVID. He says, our thoughts and prayers go to the president, first lady, and all those who have suffered and continue to suffer at the hands of this pandemic. So, not much there, right? He's a U.S. attorney, and so they're going to be very careful with their social media posts. I checked anyways, but not much there. He has a post about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, says that she was a titan in the legal industry, a person of integrity and a role model for my daughters and women everywhere. I hope that the family and friends find some comfort in her passing. On Rosh Hashanah, she will be missed. Another one, to those in Wilmington who exercise their rights to lawfully protest, thank you for respecting the memory of George Floyd and our city. Please help us stop those, many from outside Delaware, who seek to loot and destroy, who respect nothing. Okay, so that is, again, May 31, 2020. So sort of seeing some themes here, don't you? Kind of see a theme of symbolic unity with George Floyd, and maybe that side of the movement. That was on May 31st. That was right after George Floyd was killed. Then we also have sort of an anti-gun little tendency going on there, really, critical of guns. You could say that that might be because he's politically aligned that direction, or you could say it's because he's a U.S. attorney. He's a prosecutor, and they all talk badly about guns. But then how do you sort of juxtapose that with sort of, he says lawfully protest. Okay, so yeah, right. So maybe this doesn't really show much of an ideological bend either way. Who knows? Let's see. He says, contrast the power of peaceful protest versus an act of senseless violence. The first symbol of what one man can accomplish, a moment in time that lasts forever. The second is just another moment like any other. It's a great point. It's a great point that we made here on this channel, right? Excellent point. I think I totally agree with him on this. I've never endorsed violence or ever really supported much of the protests in general, because we know that the peaceful protests are not really peaceful protests. They're kind of like violent riots. And so you kind of can't just change the label and expect everybody to look the other way. So, there's a couple things there that are interesting, but not much to really glean out of there. Not much on his Twitter account where you can just say, oh, this guy's clearly an anti-Trumper. But you can see a little bit of some tendencies one direction. Now, relatively few details of the Hunter Biden probe ultimately leaked out ahead of the election, in part because the Delaware U.S. Attorney's Office is small. The information is tightly guarded. In the weeks leading up to the election, Barr also took steps to prevent its public disclosure. There it is, folks. The probe did not gain widespread attention outside of conservative media until weeks after the presidential election, by design, when Hunter released a statement saying Weiss's office had notified him of it. Isn't that nice? Right after the election. Oh, here you go. Yeah, by the way, we're going to indict you. We're investigating you. We've got all these problems with you. Right after the election. Some Republicans called for the appointment of a special prosecutor, but Barr called that step unnecessary. So, right, is it really about Weiss, or does this really sort of work its way up to the top? Bill Barr. Barr, according to the Wall Street Journal, this was published in 2020. You may have missed it. This was information that came out right after the election, said that Barr kept Hunter Biden probes from the public to avoid election politics. In preventing the leaks, he hewed to the Justice Department practice and defied his critics' view of him, right? So they're always going to default to that. And that's totally reasonable. I actually think it's a good policy. It would be nice if the Justice Department was sort of adhering to its policies that it sets, because then that would give us some guidance on how they operate in the political sphere. But they don't really do that. Sort of the policies will change, or let's say they'll adhere to the policy here where we can't release any information of the probe because it's right in the middle of the election. It's going to cause a lot of problems. Okay, we get that. But you're going to adhere to a formal policy while you leak the rest of the documents over to the Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, and all of those people, right, for the stuff that it politically serves you. Why was the Trump administration leaky as all hell, whereas now suddenly, when it's something that might harm Donald Trump, you've got Bill Barr and you've got all these other people say suddenly, oh, no, now it's about privacy and ethics, whereas in any other case, it would have been, it leaks out like a sieve. Maybe you should blame Trump for that. Maybe Trump should have, had a tighter ship or something. I don't know. But here's the rest of this article. It says Barr, in the weeks before November's election, instructed prosecutors and senior colleagues to prevent word of investigations into Hunter Biden from becoming public, kept the Justice Department out of campaign politics, according to people familiar with the matter. He took more steps than previously reported to insulate their investigations, despite calls from Trump to announce a probe. Barr and senior officials relayed the instructions in conversations with prosecutors, questioning whether their staff could be trusted against issuing subpoenas or taking steps that might become public. So they literally go in and just clamp down on the entire prosecution. Barr, the department, didn't respond to an October letter from Republican lawmakers requesting that he appoint special counsel to investigate them either. So Barr just kind of papered over the whole thing. Not sure that you can actually, connect any of that really to to Weiss, the prosecutor, but maybe it goes up to the top. Over with Bill Barr. What do you think? Let's take a look at some questions coming in over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Quick shout out to the chat. We've got Speech Unleashed here. We've got Relic Hunter. Lil Panda Cub is in the house. See the Veil is here as well. And let's see what else is happening here. Let's go on over to the questions over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we see here that Panda is in the house. She gives us a nice little remark. Says, reminder that YouTube takes 30% of all Super Chats. So if you're okay with that, it's up to you. I can read all Super Chat. Don't do Super Chats. You can subscribe to Locals to get access to community chats, and we can send the form in with the questions. That's from Panda. Thank you, Panda, for that. And that's a great point, right? If you want to use the form to ask a question, then that is the better place monetarily for the channel. There's no question about that. But either way, I know a lot of people don't want to go over to Locals, so we're going to try to come to you and be accessible. We live to serve here, my friends. All right, next up, we've got Thunder7 says, hi, Rob. Even after the election, Hunter's crimes are being covered up. Remember when Joe Obama hired Nicholas McQuaid as acting assistant in the DOJ? He's still working there covering up. Is he still working there covering up for the crime family, the Biden crime? I don't know. I don't actually recognize that name. Nicholas McQuaid, acting assistant in the DOJ. I'm not recalling that. Maybe I should. Thank you for that, though, Thunder7. We've got Want to Know is here, says, son is the same as the father. Is anyone shocked it involves underage too? Of course, Joe has to protect his own kid. That's what parents do all the time. Not much tough love here. Joe knew everything going on. Most fathers are not stupid. Yeah, well, Joe was taking pictures with him, with Carlos Slim and the rest of a whole cadre of Mexican business people in the White House, in the vice presidential residence. Edon Tess is here, says, we have this news day after day, how so many news media outlets are spouting pure propaganda. The social media companies are in the tank with the same groups, bad news after bad news. How do we move the conversation for being maligned to action items to change the tide? Sorry for yelling, but I've had it with the hand wringing. It's time to do something. So Edon Tess, I love it. I love it. I love action. I also agree with you. I sort of get tired of a lot of the complaints that we see from people. Of course, I am a commentator, so you're going to hear a lot of complaints from me. Kind of that's I think one method of action, candidly. I think that more people speaking their mind, more people engaging other people. I was just talking to Henry, to Zuck, over today from our community over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. What's up, Zuck? We've got a lot of, we were talking specifically about sort of shaking people out of the stupor. A lot of people are just in this stupor, and they could use a little bit of a wake-up call. I kind of jar them up out a little bit. Hey, maybe the government is not as honest. Here's why. Hey, maybe that policy doesn't make any sense for you. Here's why, right? But not in a way that is annoying and overly aggressive, right? I talked about this yesterday or earlier this week about being a program of attraction, not promotion, about being, living your life well, doing things appropriately, being a person of character, moral, and integrity, and, living your life with some discipline and some rigor. And when people see you doing well, they're going to sort of want to know, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Who are you listening to? I'm noticing something new about you. This is very interesting. Tell me more, right? That's attraction rather than promotion. If you go promote things like, knocking on doors, screaming about vaccines, that makes people recoil from that. So I think that what we're doing, it's a very slow process. I think that, largely we're seeing a shift, at least with sort of, conservative libertarian thinkers, with people who are sort of in the crypto space. There's a lot of technologists who are building a separate parallel system. And so it's going to take 20 years before we start seeing things that resemble YouTube and Google and Facebook or CNN or ABC or the New York Times, right? These are institutions that have been around for 50 years, 60 years. Some of, Google and YouTube less time than that, but still decades. So before there's a proper response, before the pendulum swings back the other way, and there's a renewed call for freedom and free speech and, more individual liberties and less government bureaucracy and more personal responsibility, then it's going to take time to get there, is my point. The pendulum's going to swing. And so what we need to do is just brick by brick, continue to speak our minds, live according to our values. And if we communicate enough and we're sort of, vocal enough, then I think slowly but surely we're all going to connect and brick by brick build the next layer of our society. And it's going to take some time. And that's why I say we're in it for the long haul. I'm frustrated too with you, Edon Test. I'm frustrated as hell, my friend, but we got to just do it. It's little tiny bites, just one little tiny bite after another, and then we'll get there. We've got Panda Lawyer is here, says, Delaware, isn't that the most corrupt place in the U.S.? I heard the Clinton Foundation and the Trump Organization share the same floor in that building that houses 2,000 companies, aka post boxes. Delaware has reduced right of insight into owners of companies, shell companies, while some states have reduced taxes, no taxes. It's all set up. You can have low taxes in one state while ownership is in Delaware. That's exactly right. Yeah, Panda Lawyer is exactly right. So I don't know that I would call it necessarily, corrupt for a lot of those reasons, but I think that you can certainly. So let me say this. Delaware is a place that is very favorable to corporations. That's why corporations incorporate there, because they have a lot of favorable laws legally. Many corporations do it. It's sort of kind of a known thing in the business world. I don't think that in and of itself is corruption, right? I like free enterprise. I like the ability to sort of, create companies and sort of have the ability to start over in America and try new things and innovate. It's beautiful. That same framework certainly will lead to some corruption. I don't think that the underlying framework itself is corrupt, but I certainly understand your point, right? There are always going to be people who exploit laws and will take serious advantage of that. And if that's true, Hillary and Clinton in the same foundation, that's just hysterical. That wouldn't surprise me a bit. All right, let's see what else we've got. Good to see you, Panda. We've got a few more coming in. We've got No Techie Panda says, rest in peace. I forgot to set a category on my very intelligent question. That's all right. I think we figured it out. We have Red Pilled Convict is here. It's been a long time since we've seen the Red Pilled Convict. Good to see you back here, my friend. Says, do you think any of those photos would pass Joe's sniff test? Joe might enjoy that too much. I think he'd probably prefer the real thing, but that's a horrible comment. All right. Where is Durham? Says Nadarb Lasir. And I was talking about my comment, not yours, Red Pill comment. Where is Durham? Yeah, I don't know, Nadarb. Where is he? He's been, I think, investigating something. I don't know. I read a headline that Devin Nunes was going to say that, was saying that the Durham report was going to result in some people going to prison, but I think we've heard that enough that it's hard to believe it. Todd Trout is here, says, Rob, do you think that it does not matter who appointed these judges? Is Weiss an establishment judge? It's not the Dems versus the DOP. Is it the corrupt establishment versus the rest of us? I think that there really is some truth to that, and we saw a lot of that during COVID. Really very few people were willing to stand up and sort of shout from the rooftops and actually do anything meaningful during COVID. I mean, everybody just got in, fell in line, just got, lockstep one by one. Governors across the board. I think we had 1 out of 50 governors who didn't lock down the state, something ridiculous like that. And I understand needing to do that. I understand, following the herd and just, being scared and sort of buckling to the political pressure. But there were some pretty troubling things that happened there. And there was a lot of opportunity, I think, for somebody to say, early on that the government just doesn't have this much unbridled, unlimited control. We had a case here where there was a business owner who sued the government and said, what you're doing is violating equal protection. It's violating due process. You are singling out my business. It was a gym. And other places can be open, but mine can't. Why not? They haven't justified it. And when I read those cases, I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that the courts don't have a good legal answer for why they close down these businesses regardless. There really isn't a good legal answer other than to say that the circumstances are so serious that we basically have no choice, right? We don't know what to do. And so, and I don't like that that is the default at all. I don't like that a governor can go into a court, can go into a legislature, and as long as they all agree that this is worth it, that they can just trample all over your constitutional rights. Because I don't agree with them that that was worth it. I think there were many other ways we could have dealt with COVID, and I've been saying that for a year and a half now, but I'm not in charge. They are. And the fact that they can sort of just form this cabal against us is highly problematic. And they are all part of the establishment. Their paychecks come from you, all of them. Judges, prosecutors, DAs, all of the elected officials, right? They're all part of a system, and they are very indebted to that system. They wanted to establish, and that's their entire career. That's what gives them meaning. That's what gives them purpose. So when you have somebody like a Donald Trump who comes in, which some people might say he's establishment or now or whatever, right? He was throwing elbows around. Everybody wanted him out, which means that, in my opinion, he was not that. So I think it's very, very reasonable to presume that there is some sort of connection there. We got Soul Viking is here, says, once again, a left media outlet is trying to manipulate the public with their love fest, obvious political ally, Weiss. Disgusting, but not surprising. Good to see you, Soul Viking. Let's see who else. We've got Twitter Mod is here. Panda, the Twitter Mod Panda says, his tweets aren't the worst, mate. He is careful, but what you can see, he is trying, meaning he wants to be liked by the Dems. That is dangerous in and itself. Yeah, they weren't bad, right? There really wasn't much there. Nadarb says, the argument of not wanting to affect the outcome is the worst excuse I've ever heard. If there was ever a time where making the public aware of an investigation, it would be when the subject of an investigation is one of the two choices for becoming the bleeping president. There is no turning this ship around. It's going to sink one way or another. Good to see you, Nadarb. We got, who else is here? Speech Unleashed says, the media, people in power, and government officials should not be allowed to keep information from the people. Let the people decide if something matters to them enough to influence their vote. If people are responsible enough to vote, they should be considered responsible enough to determine what will or what will not influence their individual vote. I couldn't agree with that more. That's from Speech Unleashed. Let's see. We've got Want to Know says, Fox News is talking about Hunter right now, almost word for word what you're saying. Your email's hacked, or just great minds think alike. Yeah, it's sort of funny. I've been checking out what Tucker Carlson is doing, and we've been covering a lot of the same stories lately. I'm not sure what that's about. And I'm not watching him. I watch him after the show. And not every night, but sometimes I just sort of will pop it on. And it's been a weird coincidence. Like, we've been talking about the same things. Now, they are, of course, the biggest stories in the country. So that doesn't make, I guess that's not a surprise. But it is just weird because then, other people that I check out, there are a number of people I check out on the left too. You can go see who I follow over there and see what they're talking about. But I like to sort of just see what people are talking about. And Tucker is one of those guys that's even a little bit outside of the norm, even with Fox, right? So you can see what they're talking about. One of these things just doesn't belong there. One of these things is not like the others. And that's sort of Tucker Carlson, because then it goes over to Hannity and then Laura and then Greg. And it's all, it's sort of back to the Republican talking points after that. It's a very interesting phenomenon. And if you watch this, Tucker and Sean, I don't think they like each other at all. At all. I watched one the other day where Tucker was counting down the clock sort of as the show runs out. Like, they don't want to go over their time. Tucker goes, I think, like 7 seconds over or 7 seconds short. And he said, yep, we're 7 seconds early. And Sean goes, oh, we're counting seconds now? All right. Well, okay, thanks. It's my show now. You're going, what is going on over there? It's kind of hilarious. All right, John, which is totally not relevant to anything we're talking about. That's okay. John Delar is next. John Delar says, Hunter Biden is the son that the Democrats wish Don Jr. had. He could kill someone for crack and the media would try to bury it. Well, he may have, right? He doesn't remember a lot of it. Maybe he did. Who knows? John Delar says, I wonder if Barr will buy one of Hunter's paintings. Yeah, it's a good question. We'll never know because it's all secret. Kareem165 says, do you think it would be a good idea for people to boycott YouTube altogether and use only alternative platforms such as Locals for all the channels they regularly watch? I don't know that would do much of anything. Look, I really try not to be too adversarial with big tech or with some of these agencies. I think that if you sort of make it a war, then it sort of makes things more aggressive. I think that the smarter play, honestly, is just to say, okay, well, look, we're going to continue to use you while you're interesting. you're not going to be that interesting if people continue to bail. So it's sort of, it's like, what if we could help nudge them in the right direction and say, hey, what you did after January 6th was ridiculous. Banning a president of the United States is ridiculous. And we as the American people, we don't like when you do that. So, either you sort of get back into comportment, or we are going to start bailing. And it's kind of impossible to bail off YouTube right now. I mean, the platform is kind of the only thing, and everything is semi-inferior. Locals is great, but they're working on it. Rumble is great. They're working on it. My point is, I think that in a year or so, when those platforms are a little bit more mature, I don't think you're going to even need to boycott YouTube. People will just say, well, there's nothing on there anymore, right? The more interesting conversations are happening elsewhere, and we'll see. We'll see. I think we're still early in this. I think a lot of people freaked out after January 6th and after COVID. I'm hopeful that things don't continue to spiral downward. Maybe they will. Anyways, maybe that's just me being too optimistic about it. Good question, though. Addendum from Edon Test says, my comment to move to action is not aimed at your commentary. We need your commentary and news breakdown for sure. But how can we as a community now move towards doing things? Yeah, that's a great question. That's a good question. That's a good question, because what needs... Run for office, right? Run for something. Yeah, I know. Oh, I got to get an application in. I'm running for something again. Hopefully I get reelected in city of Scottsdale. It's a good reminder. I gotta fill out that form like today. All right, we've got, next one is from Robute. Says, Hunter Biden is a disgusting degenerate. There was a story where he got an assistant to buy something, and we're gonna just go ahead and not read that one here on YouTube. Robute. We're going to, we'll go back to that one later on. We have, See the Veil is in the house, says, Rob, I remembered to put my name in here this time. You said the most awful thing, freedom? Freedom has to let the private equity firms buy up most of the homes across the USA. Freedom has allowed the banks to get away with 2008. Supreme Court just shot down the lawsuit against the big banks for 2008. Freedom has allowed the Biden family to exploit the laws. See the Veil. Yeah. I know. I just saw, what's it, BlackRock? I think they're just doubling down. They're going to open up their funds to continue to gobble up houses so that the middle class can't buy them. Nice. Yeah, God Panda says it's not corrupt, it's unethical. You don't run around yelling tax everyone while your state has that system. What most politicians do is not corruption. It's a gray zone. Unethical and immoral. That's from God Panda. Then we have next, we got Robute says, hey, Rob, are you familiar with the Streamlab donations where you can get donations that are at a less fee? I heard you got banned from Discord there. Yep, we did. We got banned from there. Harmful and dangerous there as well. There are open source alternatives called Element, which include end-to-end encryption like Signal, which uses decentralized servers with Discord-like functionality, which can help people avoid NSA surveillance. Okay, called Element. Wow. Okay, I did not know that. That's a great suggestion. Yeah, maybe. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking about trying Discord again. Maybe they've calmed down now, or actually trying Slack. Because we use Slack here at the office, I could just start a second Slack channel. I don't know if people use Slack though. So outside of the business world, but Element, I'll check that out. Thank you, Robute. Very nice comment. I'm learning a lot. We got Tutor Pandas here, says, I want a short course on the hierarchy of the laws. I don't think people realize how the laws enhance and limit each other. So I guess that's a good question there. So the hierarchy of the laws, probably you're talking about sort of which laws reign supreme and sort of how the structure works, right? You've got federal law, you've got the Code of Federal Regulations, then you've got all sorts of, statutory law, you've got state law, then you've got city law, and you've got, all sorts of different interpretations of those laws in the case law. It's a lot. You're right. It's a lot. A short course. I'm trying to think of something that exists like that. And I can't right now. All right. Well, I'll take a note of that. We got Be Brave here, says, if people don't start speaking up or taking peaceful action, there won't be anything left to stand up for. That's from Be Brave, which is the most appropriate username for that comment. If people don't start speaking up and taking peaceful action, there won't be anything left to stand up for. And then we've got Locals Panda says, what is the address to your locals? She's asking. She says, I think she is the appropriate pronoun. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But, pandas are just, they kind of feel like a she to me. I don't know. Maybe that's my bigoted gender pronoun worldview. I don't know. But what is the address to your locals? It's watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thanks for asking. And our last one on this segment is from 3 Girlies, says, do you wonder if Hunter puts cocaine in the painting to justify the amount of money that they are supposed to go for. I mean, if it's not the name recognition, perhaps it's the drug content. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Yeah, right. You just kind of mix the cocaine right into your paint, and you're just like, yeah, look, this is $1,000 stroke, $1,000 stroke. And he's got kilos coming in, and a little methamphetamines. We already know that there's like STDs in them, so hepatitis A, B, C, D, and E, F, and chlamydia, and gonorrhea, and all of them are on that one painting. We've talked about that here. I made a TikTok video about that down in the description below. The drug content, beefed it up. Last one here is the. The last one here is from Panda. Says, I'm a guy, dude. Sorry, brother. All right. Well, there you go. That's a good way to wrap up that segment. Great questions from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thank you for all of your support over there. Thanks so much for watching. Before you head out, I want to just remind you that I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and we've got a long history of helping good people facing criminal charges to find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. Our phone number for a free case evaluation is 480-787-0394. You can also find us online at www.rrlawaz.com. We can help with any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona. Things like DUI, drug offenses, misdemeanor offenses. And we can also help with clearing up old case records, like expunging cases or making sure that you can restore your rights so that you can vote again or possess a firearm again or apply for some other federal benefits. We can remove mugshots off the internet. Basically, anytime that you or somebody you know or love is in trouble with the law in the state of Arizona, we have an amazing team of people. We would just love the opportunity to help. And our phone number, of course, 480-787-0394. And if you don't need any legal services, that's a very good thing, but you may be interested in some informational offerings so that you are prepared if you do have to deal with the police. And of course, I want to invite you to head on over to gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. You'll notice here, I've got several different trainings that are available, including the law enforcement interaction training. This is the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's one rule you need, 2 questions that the police can ask of you, and 3 responses if they ask you a problematic question. So that's available now. You can also get a load at my personal productivity system here called Existence Systems. Fun little course. And then we have here, if you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check out this program. We are meeting twice every month. Again, all of this over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. And if none of that sounds any good to you, well, just go ahead and give us a follow, because I'm working on some other products and some other offerings. And of course, if you have not already done so, I want to invite you one more time to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's where you can support the show, and it's where we can connect. We've got monthly Zoom meetings and a lot of other goodies coming up. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your love and support. I will see you on the next one.